Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Now, here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. Whether you're tuning in on the radio dial here in Mississippi at WYAD 94.1 FM, we welcome you all back to our show. Also, those tuning in through our online affiliates around the world, including our Heart Radio family, we're glad to have all of you with us as well. Best-selling author John Hart is with us today, celebrating the release of his new book, The Hush. We're going to talk to John not only about the new book, but also what it's been like for him to create characters throughout the years that readers have enjoyed to take the thrill ride along with, and also what it was like for him to add various elements in this new book that people are already talking about. If you're just now hearing about The Hush, we'll tell you at the end of our segment how you can get the book for yourself. But John, hello to you and welcome to the program.
Cyrus, thanks for having me.
Hey, the pleasure's definitely all mine. I was just saying to you, congratulations to you on the new book. It's out now for our audience to be able to get in a variety of ways, and we'll remind them of that a little bit later. John, what has this experience been like for you now to be an author that not only has, I think, readers around the world, but also have people talking about the characters you've been able to create?
Well, I grew up as an avid reader. I mean, as a kid, back in junior high school, I remember being awake at 2 a.m, debating whether I could manage one more chapter before I turned off the lights. So I've always loved the written word for all the great reasons. You know, the escapism, the storytelling, the beauty of the language if done properly. It's just been a great experience, and I always thought I wanted to do it. But here's the thing: there is no roadmap to success in creative writing. One, you can take the MFA programs, you can read the books, but at the end of the day, this is a business where they're mass-producing objects, meaning stories that are different every single time. And there's so many decision makers that go into how a book becomes successful, what gets published, what gets promoted. And those things are beyond the control of the writer. So all the writer can do, of course, is write the best story, use the best language. And it took me 15 years to get my first novel published, and I had multiple careers while I was trying to make that happen. But I've been doing this full-time now, I suppose, for about 10 or 12 years. And it's honestly, Cyrus, it's everything I hoped it would be. I love being able to go deep in my own thoughts, to come up with the kind of characters that I think matter and that people will relate to, and then find the most fascinating way to tell a story that will hold the reader. And then to come to days like this. This is the official release date of The Hush, my 6th novel, and to be able to go out into the world and talk about it on shows like yours, at events like the ones I'll be doing for the next 5 weeks all over the country. It's everything I'd hoped it would be. I mean, I don't know if that's responsive enough or specific enough to your question, but it's just delightful.
Right. No, it definitely is. And I think the other side of it is, John, I mean, you talk about how much you enjoy it. I mean, literally readers have been waiting for this moment. Even though I mentioned to you I had the opportunity, the privilege to be one of the early readers at the end of last year, reading as part of the Amazon Vine program. And I mentioned to you as a heads up as we went into this segment that, you know, part of the conversation that we all were having, well, some of us, I should say, about The Hush is that even though we're able to kind of be reintroduced to the character, Johnny, you know, this is a book that I think in many ways many people see as a book that can stand on its own, even though there are, you know, reminders from The Last Child. When you kind of went into this book, how did you see it? Did you see it as a continuation of Johnny's journey, or did you see it as a new chapter?
More of the new chapter angle. I mean, well, here's the thing. I saw the character the same and the story completely different. So The Last Child was my most successful book at the time, right? I mean, it was 35 weeks on the bestseller list. It won my second Edgar. People were responding to it in very powerful ways. And, of course, that as a writer is exactly what you want, because you've read The Last Child, I imagine. I took a lot of chances to make that book work. And, you know, mainly to have an adult-themed thriller driven by a 13-year-old boy and not be shelved as a YA novel was a victory. Yeah. And there were many other small victories that made it work. And when I looked back at the end of that book, Cyrus, I didn't want to disturb the bubble I'd put these characters in. It just all felt very fully formed to me, and I didn't want to disturb it. But over the years, I kept thinking about Johnny and Jack and this fictional world I'd created called Raven County, North Carolina. And the epiphany that I had sometime later was that if I set a sequel 10 years in the future, when they're not boys anymore but young men, I could write the sequel without disturbing that bubble of The Last Child. But here's the thing. You talk about this decision. Is it standalone or is it sequel? To be successful in the writing field, it's important to do all the writing well. But one also has to marry that art and craft to a certain amount of business realities, okay? No matter how many copies of The Last Child I sold, no matter how many people read The Last Child, I did not want to make that my exclusive audience for The Hush. Some percentage of that. I wanted to be able to reach a broader audience because that's the name of the game. I mean, finding more readers, sharing your stories with more people. So I made a twofold decision to basically create a standalone that touched, the lodestone of The Last Child, meaning if you'd read The Last Child, I do think this book would be more meaningful, but you do not need to read The Last Child to read this book. So it was part business decision, and it was also based on the fact that I decided to tell a different kind of story than I did in The Last Child, and I had to take that into consideration as well.
Right, and we're going to talk about that for sure. I appreciate that lead-in. I want to say for those who are just tuning in, either on the radio side or online, you're listening to Conversations Live. We're excited to welcome best-selling author John Hart to our program today. He's celebrating the release of his brand-new book, The Hush. It's out now in a variety of ways in print. You can get the audio edition, as well as, of course, for Kindle readers, that edition is available as well. We're talking with him about the writing journey, but also about the new book. You talked about the chances that you take. And the interesting thing about The Hush for me in reading it is that it is, I love the fact that you really went into this, it seems like, John, with no limits. We're able to get various elements of the story, whether it's, spiritual connections that are made, supernatural connections, but also I think, the ideas of family, friendship, of ownership. There's so many different themes. How much fun was that for you? Because I think it ties into what you said about, not being tied to one audience. How much fun was that for you to kind of be free in what you discussed in The Hush?
Well, it was hugely fun. I think I had more fun writing this book than any other because, I did decide to break some of the rules of the natural world and explore ideas of things that are unseen and things that maybe have been around for a long time, but that people have lost sight of. And one reviewer referred to the book as being elemental, which I loved. It's about the ties of people to the land in the past and the resonance of things in the past that affect us even today. So I did enjoy doing a slightly different kind of book. It's just, I'm not sure. It's such a big topic. What does one bring to a work as a writer? And you talk about elements of friendship and family and place and the land, and these have been important topics to me throughout my writing career. They appear importantly in every book I've ever written. And I think that it's important for the writer to do so many things for the reader. First and foremost, characters that matter, story that compels. But why can't we do a little bit more and bring in some of these thematic elements that put additional weight to the story? And, if I've never claimed ever to try to educate, enlighten, or reform through my writing. I'm a storyteller first. But I do think that if there are thought-provoking questions or elements to the story, then that's wonderful. If people are having conversations about the story that goes beyond merely what happened on the page and perhaps deeper into some of the questions about what do these things mean and what's most important, I think that's great. That's part of the job, just not, for me, the primary job.
Sure. And I think, too, to look at The Hush by itself, I think the other side of it is, I think the name of this place where Johnny finds himself is interesting, but also I think one of the big things I thought about, and I think I can say this without spoiling it for anyone because we're going to let our audience know how they can get it, is that, when it comes to the past, when it comes to, things that have been held for so long, it's hard to keep those things silent, that no matter how much time has passed, there is still a voice that is there. Was that part of what you knew was going to take place with this book, that there would be things that would go beyond what the characters like Johnny and Jack would experience, that would speak in ways that maybe they had not thought of?
Yeah. I didn't know exactly what shape it would take, but yes, I went into this knowing that I wanted to do something a little bit broader and a little bit deeper than what I'd done before. So let's talk about the name The Hush for a minute. That is in reference to the term hush arbor, and that is an actual historical artifact going back to slave times. Slaves that wanted to worship Christianity were required by circumstance to do so in private for the most part. So they would go out into the woods and the swamps and worship in secret out of fears for their own safety. And there was a reference to this in The Last Child, and to the fact that Johnny Merriman, the young boy's great-great-great-grandfather, had freed his slaves and given them this swampy area where they used to worship in secret. And for now 180 years, this forgotten area of the county has been inhabited by the descendants of these freed slaves. And so their connection to the land is every bit as strong as Johnny's. And I had a lot of fun really bringing the reader into the story in the 1850s. Why did Johnny's ancestor make that decision? I mean, it cost him everything. He was hounded out of town. He was persecuted. He was bankrupted. But there has to be a story there. Nobody knows why the wealthiest man in the county freed 100 slaves and gave 6,000 acres to one of them. So that's kind of the lodestone, the touch point in the past for this book. And all of the circumstances that surrounded that decision have resonated up through the decades and the centuries and inform what's going on in the main story. And I knew that when I decided to write that type of story, that there would be these great opportunities to delve into things that might have been forgotten over the years and the centuries, and things that still have power, and things that are unseen. And that was a lot of fun. And I knew I would get into it. I make these stories up as I go. I call it Grope and Hope. And I didn't know exactly what I'd find.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, John, the book is a lot of fun to read. I know our audience will appreciate it as well. Again, it's out now, The Hush. You can get it through our partners at Amazon.com or through your favorite bookstore. If they don't have it, make sure you ask them to order it for you. They'll be more than happy to do so. And, John, as you said, you're going to be out traveling, meeting your readers. How can they stay connected with you?
Well, thank you for the question, because I do love the tour. Writing is a pretty lonely business, so it's nice to get on the road and meet readers once every year or two. The tour schedule is on my website. That's johnhartfiction.com. That's probably the best place to do it. It has all the details they need.
All right. Well, John, congratulations to you again. Thank you so much for a great conversation, and looking forward to speaking with you again.
Yeah, well, thank you, Cyrus. You have a great day. I really appreciate it.
You're more than welcome. We appreciate you. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying, as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Make sure you take out time to enjoy some good music as well as a great book. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live today. You all make it a great one.